supported all this. We've been doing this every week, every Tuesday, and we have been non-stop. There's been some terrific actions from Palestine Action on the roof, on the gates. There's been a great actions from the community have all come out to support us. And today is a special day because we have somebody who embodies, for me, the spirit of the grassroots movement that we've created here in Oldham, of so many different people from different backgrounds, different ages, different towns in the north of England. And it's 10 years since Soundtrack to the Struggle, which was his most important album, came out, that we all know the words to, we all know the power of those lyrics. And shall we give him a big round of applause, everybody? Come to Oldham. It's Lowkey, give him a cheer!
Thank you so much for all of the inspiration to everybody here. You are an example for what we need to apply across the country. The clear display of expense that the state has gone to deal with something that is merely asking the British government to observe the Arms Trade Treaty to which it is a signatory. If the business secretary and those around him have any belief that something may be used in violation of international humanitarian law, then they should not grant export licenses. That is according to the Arms Trade Treaty, to which Britain is a signatory. Yet again and again and again in the state of Israel, it seems to be exceptionalized. It's not us who call for BDS exceptionalizing the state of Israel, it's the international community which exceptionalizes Israel. So I'm just going to put forth very quickly the legal argument for BDS. The core of this contradiction when we talk about the Nakba is the fact that UN Resolution 194, Article 11, clearly stipulates that Palestinians should have the right to return home. Israel again and again denies that. And in fact, the preventing of Palestinians from returning to their home is prohibited under the Apartheid Convention and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Israel has acquired much territory through force, and of course that is illegal under international law according to the UN Charter. It's illegal to colonize occupied land and transfer non-indigenous populations to it. It's a violation of paragraph 6 of Article 49 of the Geneva Convention, and Israel does it again and again. Israel is in violation of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child by imprisoning 500 to 700 Palestinian children every single year, some of them as young as 12, and the most common charge that is visited upon them is stone throwing, for which Israeli military court can give people up to 20 years in prison. It has a formalized system of discrimination, different legal application to different people, a dual legal system depending on identity. Now that technically fits what is the UN definition of apartheid, which of course everyone knows is considered to be a crime against humanity. In 2004, the very wall which Elbit is involved in the building of, which Elbit has earned billions from the building of, was deemed by the International Court of Justice to be illegal. And here we are 18 years later, and that wall not only still stands but is being added to. Of course, the targeting of civilians is defined as a crime by the Geneva Conventions. Collective punishment is defined as a crime by the Geneva Conventions, and yet we have seen Israel do it again and again. In 2002, you actually saw 17 different UN General Assembly resolutions passed criticizing Israel. To get an idea of the scale in relation to the rest of the world, only 6 were passed mentioning other countries. So in fact, Israel was 17 out of 23 of all the UN General Assembly resolutions that were criticizing states. Israel refuses to define its own borders, and it has invaded every single country that it is next to. Israel is believed to have launched an assassination program in at least 18 different states in the world. From Italy to France to Cyprus to Greece to Norway, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan, Uruguay, Lebanon, Brazil, Tunisia, Belgium, Malta, Malaysia, Syria and Iran. What state behaves like that and still gets $10.4 million from the US government on a daily basis? What state behaves like that and still gets $430,000 per hour from the US government, $7,000 per minute, $120 per second. That is what the US government gives to Israeli crimes that we have just described. How are we in a situation where in US Congress you have seen 33 million spent on funding by Israel lobbyists just in the last year to Congress people, and the US government decides to give an extra $1 billion to the state, an extra $1 billion to the state of Israel to replenish the Iron Dome situation? You are not on the side of the criminals. The criminals are behind that fence, are in government, and are in those institutions that back up this status quo. We stand here out of an eternal struggle for justice. The Palestinian struggle against colonialism from the late 1800s to today is the longest struggle in human history against colonialism. We assert clearly, not only in our communities, but including in our schools and our educational institutions. Our educational institutions claim to oppose racism. Zionism is racism. The core hypocrisy of Zionism is that you can somehow take what was a group of people, ethnically cleanse almost 1 million of those people, 750,000 people from Palestine, deny them the right to return, and somehow call yourself anti-racist. Somehow the British state thinks that it can, on one hand, exchange intelligence with the Israeli state. It can literally, when the Great March of Return was happening and Palestinians were trying to practice their right under UN Resolution 194, the British government sold components for sniper rifles to the Israeli army. Those components were used to target people in the knees. Today in Gaza, they refer to it as a city of amputees, because you have people that have had the bottoms from their knees downwards removed because of British components. When you look at the F-16s that Israel used to bomb bookshops, media towers, in Gaza, in the recent in May, you find in those F-16s BAE Systems components. You find in the F-35 BAE Systems components. This is one of the most subsidized organizations in British history. We do not need this. Where else have Elbit sold weapons to? They've also sold materials to the maritime forces to surveil people trying to come into the country. They've also sold weapons to the Indian army. Bear in mind there's hundreds of thousands of Indian soldiers in Kashmir occupying it and targeting Kashmiri people with Elbit Systems weapons. On top of that, you also have the building of the wall, not only in Palestine, but the building of the wall along the border between the United States and Mexico, which Elbit has gained billions of dollars from. We come out today as a community-enforced BDS to say absolutely clearly there is no home for this in Oldham, not today and not ever. Thank you very much. We're going to do some hope you'll join us. Big round of applause now for Lowkey. We are hugely thankful for your support here today and everything that you said. And especially the justice for the Palestinians. I'm sure a few people will want to hear some songs as well. Anybody here came here just to hear some songs? Yeah, I think so. But the message that